Hey guys, it's Jeff, and today we're talking about iOS, more specifically iOS 14, and kind of going into a little bit farther past iOS 14 into the future of iOS, because Apple has been not satisfied with how they're developing iOS as of late, like iOS 12, iOS 13, and they're wanting to switch some things up going on into the future. So we're going to talk about those changes coming, talk a little bit about iOS 14, and what you guys can expect from this upcoming release early next year for development. Guys, go check out Clean My Mac X. It's absolutely amazing. I use it every day, and I cannot say this enough. Every Mac user needs this program. So go check it out. There's a link down below with more info, and you can also go download it to try it out for yourself. Okay, so I think it's safe to say that iOS 12, iOS 13, possibly some of the most buggy releases so far in iOS development history, specific to iOS developers. So if you have the developer beta profiles installed onto your device, you may know what I'm talking about. There's been a lot of issues here and there, and a lot of people have expressed some issues with the iOS development process. Now, Apple internally has expressed, like their internal testers have expressed that there's a lot of features that go into iOS and basically ruin the entire experience for the rest of the iOS experience. So these new features might be great and all, but they're kind of ruining other parts of iOS. So that comes from Apple internally, and they have kind of voiced that this needs to stop happening. Now, outside of Apple, which is even more important, is the app developers for like Twitter, Facebook. These major companies that are developing apps for iOS have expressed that, hey, your development software is absolute trash. It doesn't allow us to effectively create our apps to be up to date with your software or operating system. So they have actually expressed, over the past few years that you guys need to kind of improve your internal process. Now, as far as me as a developer, I have expressed many times by filling out several forums saying, hey, this is a major bug. This needs to be fixed. Maybe you should remove this altogether. That's why you see a lot of times Apple removing new features altogether, not trying to make them work in an internal build. They're actually taking them out altogether because they're causing so many issues on the back end. So some of those features has been the screen time communication limits menu. We've had the FaceTime kind of eye correction software being taken out. That was a new feature that was taken out, and some other new features that have been taken out in the past. So moving on to iOS 14 and kind of the future of iOS development, Apple has stated that they are going to switch things up in how they develop iOS. So essentially, those new features that may cause issues will actually be able to be turned off so that app developers and the internal testers for Apple can continue developing their apps without those kind of new features in mind. So what this is leading me to believe is that Apple is actually going to hold off on new features more so in the future, just like they have with the FaceTime feature and the screen time feature. They're going to be excluding new features in the near future because they don't want those new features to affect the rest of the iOS experience. So moving on to iOS 14, do expect, if you are a developer, to have kind of like a menu of options when you first load up a new beta software, to have like maybe some of the new features that come with that beta software and the ability to turn those on or off, so that you can kind of fully test iOS 14. Now, we don't know if this is going to become like a feature for developers, or public beta testers. We don't know where the line is going to stop, but I do fully expect that for at least developers out there, companies developing software, they're all just like I am, a developer of iOS. They're going to have the ability to kind of turn those new features on or off, which is actually going to improve the overall development of iOS. Now, also, Apple internally is making some major changes as well. So they're going to actually stop releasing so many updates at a time just to correct issue after issue. They're going to focus more of an effort on getting it right from the start. So if you've noticed, we're already on to iOS 13.2 here and subsequent versions of that even. And that is way past kind of like a typical schedule that Apple has for iOS releases. So this year specifically with iOS 13, iOS 13.1 was already completed. We were already on betas for iOS 13.1 before the official release of iOS 13. Apple stated that they just simply gave up on iOS 13 and trying to make that as good as possible, and they just moved on to iOS 13.1. So you can clearly see Apple internally is frustrated, and they definitely want to make the process a lot easier on themselves. So they're going to be releasing probably a lot more frequent updates, but not as many new features or changes in those updates. So I know that might be frustrating to you guys, but internally it actually makes things a lot easier so they can test kind of like the big picture projects, in time and not be forced to release those within certain updates. So we'll likely be seeing a lot more bug release updates, and then the new feature updates kind of like more streamlined towards, an official release type build where they're a lot more stable and have, a lot more development time going on in those updates. So guys, what does this mean for you guys in iOS 14 moving forward? Well, with iOS 14 development, we might be seeing a public beta release a little bit later on in the beta process, so that developers can kind of develop their apps and kind of develop iOS as a whole more thoroughly, rather than releasing it to the public and the public having all these issues that developers have had. Now, what we also may see is a lot of new features and changes being brought to iOS that Apple is planning being pushed off a little bit later. So we might actually be seeing more new features on the kind of like latter half of iOS development, like let's say iOS 13.4. We still might be seeing new features coming in those updates because Apple has been testing them for a while. Now, Apple has said that iOS 14 will kind of present a lot of new features, major changes going on in iOS 14, but they may have to push some of those new features and changes back to iOS 15 even, just to ensure stability. So I know that for some of you that is disappointing news, but for some of us that have had major issues with iOS 12 and 13 as of late, and have had devices that are almost unusable, this is actually some really great news because it will make the development process a little bit less frustrating. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below of what you think about this change to iOS 14. But I think the major thing to think about here moving forward is that iOS 14 is going to be another major release. Apple is promising major changes coming to iOS 14, and we should expect to see a whole new iOS experience with this new update coming at WWDC 2020. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and definitely hit the like button, get subscribed, and hit that notification bell button, because there will be more content coming to you guys really soon on kind of leaked previews of iOS 14, what features we might be seeing in iOS 14, and what major changes are coming to this new version of iOS. So guys, thank you for watching this update video on kind of the future of iOS. If you have any comments, questions, or anything like that, comment those in the comment section down below. I'll get back to you guys as soon as possible. But again, guys, thank you all for watching, and hopefully I'll be catching you guys in some upcoming content. Peace.